we already touched on that scene, which is where he's sitting with the actors, Yoff and his wife and the child, and they're sharing a bowl of strawberries and I think a bowl of milk or something. And so I'm going to say his quote because it's a lovely one. The knight says, "I shall remember this hour of peace, the strawberries, the bowl of milk, your faces in the dusk, Mikael asleep, Yoff with his lute. I shall remember our words and shall bear this memory between my hands as carefully as a bowl of fresh milk. And this will be a sign and a great content." I love that quote because it somehow encapsulates what it means to find meaning in the everyday and the ordinary. And it's so rich with the kind of like humanistic worldview that doesn't, I don't know, that's satisfied with just the connection of the moment. And there's all these little things there, right? So I mean, a meal, a humble meal, it's just strawberries and a bowl of milk. Like that's it. They're not having a feast. They're not sitting even at a table. They're sitting outdoors. And these aren't like, he doesn't even have his family the night. He's with another family. He's with kind strangers and their child and his good friend. And that's it. It's just this very humble, ordinary moment. And that is the moment in the entire movie that is the most life-giving and the most at which he seems content too. So I think it's a message. I think there's something that you can take away from that scene, which is to remember what matters. It sounds a little cliche, like remember what matters, because again, we always say that stuff, right? But do we live like that? I really don't think anybody actually lives like that. I mean, it's hard. It's not even like I'm scoffing at people. It's very hard to not, wake up to an ordinary day and start complaining that the internet isn't working or like, oh, it's too cold or whatever. And all these little things that we get so wrapped up in. And then again, that's where that memento mori comes in, which is, this doesn't matter, Like when you keep in mind your mortality, you got to be careful though, because it can go to another level where it becomes an anxious, neurotic preoccupation that also prevents you from enjoying the moment that's right in front of you. But my fear is also that when I saw this, when I was writing down this scene and I said, okay, look at what it is that has brought him meaning. It's being around a child, being around friends, a humble meal, a moment shared. I realized this sounds so cliche. There's something so Hallmark card about it that it clashes so much with our culture, and it seems like that actually might be a problem, that there is some kind of cynicism and consumeristic element to our culture that makes these things that are so deeply meaningful in this movie seem cliche.
I didn't see it as cliche at all, and I think anyone
me
that does
neither, but
is a fool. I think that it's my favorite scene in the movie, and I think that it does. It's the part where the squire within me becomes content a little bit, and the squire is content in that scene also.
Yeah,
he's making some jokes, he's happy. It really is a wonderful. It makes me happy to do a podcast about movies when you can see a scene that is so good. I think that I'm not going to try to conclude my part of this podcast with any sort of advice on the meaning of life. I will say something though that is perhaps true and perhaps useful, and it'll be a way of linking back to what we've said earlier, which is, with your concern about these objects of, or with your concern about the use of social media, with our obsession with political debate and dialogue, if you even want to honor it with such a lofty term, which I don't think you should, but with all of that, those distractions are what is going to prevent you from even having the opportunity to have a picnic in Sweden with Yoff and the lute music and with the strawberries and the milk and the plague. Like, if you're constantly on Twitter, you're never even going to have the chance to go out and I'm clearly joking, but I mean, it requires you to stop filling your brain up with stuff other people have made for you to even have the opportunity to find any meaning in anything, or at least this type of meaning, because we have discussed different types of ways of finding God, quote unquote, or meaning throughout life. This one, that kind of contentedness within the moment and within your surroundings, and it's important, and there is a kind of reverence to it. And I actually do think that the economic model, the world, the pressures of the way Western society works right now, I'm not saying that it's I think that there's something about the relentless nature, I hate to say, of capitalism, but it is perhaps one of the trade-offs. Consumerism is a better way of putting it, I think, that takes us out of the ability to even have these moments where we can be content. I don't see a lot of content people around me anymore. And people are always weird. You're always weirded out. You're like, I'm like, yeah, I feel okay. And you're always like, and I understand why maybe you would say, yeah, I get it because some of the things I say. But, there is something to that. If you can take some time to step back from everything, then maybe you can at least enjoy a bowl of strawberries. Strawberries are nice if they're good. Florida has a lot of strawberries. I like strawberries. Yeah. They can sometimes poison you if they're made poorly. But
the plague. The threat is always there.